To God be the glory.
Welcome back to class number 16 as we continue studying Biblical Hebrew. Now in this particular lesson, number 16, we're going to focus a little bit more on prepositions. Now we need not say how important prepositions are. Obviously, understanding prepositions is important in any language. And so as we spend this time looking at the various prepositions, make sure you work real hard on understanding the meanings of the various letters, and what we have also learned is some inseparable prepositions. That's what we already know, but today we're going to learn, we haven't learned the inseparable prepositions, but today we will be exposed to that. All right, I'm on page 90. We're going to look at some new vocabulary words, some of which are unattached prepositions, and then we also have what are called prefixed prepositions. All right, let's go and look on page 90 to the unattached prepositions. All right, you can see first is the word meaning with, that is with somebody, would be im. That's one we've already learned. The word after is pronounced achare. By the side of, near, is etzel. Etzel. Between or among is bain. Bain. Opposite is mul. Mul. Before, in front of, is lifnei. Lifnei. Upon or on is am. Am. From, this is one that we've already learned, is min. Min, and under, instead of, we've also learned this one already, takat. Takat. Without, another one that we've already learned is beli. Beli. Until is ad. And then like or as is kemo. Kemo. All right, now we're going to learn something new that happens very often in the Scriptures, and so very important for you to learn, and that is prefixed prepositions. Now that little slash alongside the letter is trying to tell you that this is what we're attaching right on to the actual word itself. All right, so the word from is pronounced me or me. To or for would be le. In, with, at, and in your books write the word by. There's one other preposition I want to add to the three definitions that we have there. In, with, at, or by. The base, the be, will be, that will be defined as. And then like or as is ke. Just like our word right at the top of the screen, kemo, is like or as. So also does this inseparable or prefix preposition take the same or have the same definition. All right, so when we look at these, we're basically seeing that in Hebrew they did two different things with their prepositions. They had some that were attached and some that meant the exact same thing that were unattached, and this gave a little bit of flexibility. So this we've been talking about things that you add to the front of a word and things that you add to the back of a word, and by doing this sort of thing, then all you're doing is what ends up translating into English is actually several words, but in the Hebrew, all it is just one word. So here you can have the inseparable preposition, the definite article, and then you could have a word, and then you could have a suffix on the end of that, and all of that goes together. And so, once again, this should teach you one very important lesson. And what might that be? All right, if you said that once again it underscores the importance of my knowing the triliteral root, I know what those three letters are, then you're answered right, because that is the key. You've got to know what that triliteral root is, and if you don't, then you're not going to know that this is an inseparable preposition that's on the front of it, and you're not going to know that this is a suffix on the end. You'll be very confused, and you'll not be able to distinguish what the word is. So by working on your vocabulary and knowing what the triliteral root is, and also by working on these prepositions, where you know what the inseparable prepositions are, and this isn't too tough, there's only 4 of them, then you're able to distinguish between what's been tacked on to the front and what's been put on to the back of a word, and then know what the actual word is itself. All right, let's continue on now on the bottom of page 90 and talk a little bit about these unattached prepositions. All right, you notice that the book tells us to memorize the prepositions in Group A above. These prepositions are used as a separate word and are sometimes known as simple prepositions. All right, let's look at these examples. All right, we have like water is kemo mayim. Mayim, all right, these are examples of unattached prepositions. If we wanted to say near the house, then we would say etzel habayit. Etzel habayit. You may not want an etzel by your house, but that's what that word near is in Hebrew, etzel. Near or by the side of. That ought to be easy to remember what etzel means. All right, the third one down, after the flood, is acharei ha-mabul. Now, once again, we have an example of a preposition that's separated after the flood. If we wanted to say before the king, lifnei ha-melech. With the daughter would be im habat. Without water would be beli mayim. Between the trees would be bein ha etzim. Until the morning, ad ha boker. To the river would be el ha nachal. Now looking at that, you see that you've got a little dash in there, and that is not something that ought to concern you, other than that what that means to the Hebrew is that they virtually would pronounce that all as one word. And so if you were listening to a Hebrew pronounce this, they would say el ha-nachar, just like that, and almost you wouldn't hear 2 words unless you were very familiar with hearing the Hebrew language spoken. But that little dash, that's just what that means, that it's kind of all connected together and pronounced as one word. And then under the house, we would have takat habayit. Takat habayit. And that's examples of the inseparable prepositions. All right, none of these things should surprise you any. We've talked about and we've looked at all these things before, and those are just some examples in addition to some new vocabulary words from the separated prepositions. All right, but now we're going to go to the part that is talking about the prefix prepositions. This again is a very, very important thing, and by being able to do this and understand the inseparable prepositions, the ones that are attached right on, then you're going to be able to expand your ability to read in the Hebrew scriptures. All right, now as we mentioned before, there are only 4, and that's one of the blessings of this. There's not going to be a massive number of these that you're going to have to learn. Only 4 inseparable prepositions. All right, let's take a look here on page 91 to these 4 inseparable prepositions. All right, it's first is the word the le. The lamed is 2 or 4. They tell us that it's shortened from the word el, and then we have be in with. Perhaps shortened from the word bayit, house, which carries the idea of being inside or within. And then ke, like possibly from kin, which is the word yes or so, or maybe from kemo, the word for like, and then mi, shortened from mean, which is also something that we have learned. All right, and so when we look at these 4 inseparable prepositions, some of which are not very confusing, we've already learned kemo, and we know that means as or like. And so as a result, when we see the kaf at the beginning of that, then it shouldn't surprise us that this is what we're looking at. And also from the mem, that it's inseparable, that's from the word that we've already learned, mean, and so we don't have a problem with that as well. All right, now let's look at some examples right there in the middle of page 91 on the use of the inseparable prepositions. All right, if I wanted to say 2 a day, I would go liyom. If I wanted to say in a night, I'd say belayla. To Joseph, le Yosef. All right, going across and looking at 3 other examples. Like a man would be keish. In a year would be be shana. And like Moses would be ke Moshe. Now what you've noticed in all of these is that it has a shavah underneath them. And so yes, the inseparable preposition does take the shavah when it is attached to a word. All right, very simple rule to learn. All right, let's look at some other examples. And this is where we happen to have a word that already started with a shavah. And when we have a word that already starts with a shavah, then we're just going to knock one of the little dots off the inseparable preposition's shavah, and it'll look like this. For a blessing would be livracha. Livracha, like that. And instead of having 2 shavahs together, which is something that cannot happen in Hebrew. You cannot have 2 shavahs together at the beginning of a word. All right, like Samuel, instead of having 2 shavahs together, we're going to take one of the shavahs off of the kaf, and it'll be pronounced Kishmuel. Well, normally Samuel's name would be pronounced Shemuel, but now we're saying like Samuel. He was a prophet like Samuel, you might say. Well, that'd be Kishmuel. All right, in books. Book, the word book is another one that would have a just a hirik in the beginning underneath the inseparable preposition. So that'd be bisfarim. Bisfarim doesn't sound much like the Sefer that we've been learning, but that's the way that you would pronounce that. And all right, let's drop down and say if the first letter to the word has a dagesh, that is, it begins with one of the letters, begad kafat. Remember our begad kafat? The base, gimel, daleth, kaf, pei, tav. Then the dagesh is omitted when we have the base, kaf, or the lamed. All right, for example, the word house, bayit. If we want to attach an inseparable preposition to that, this is what it'd look like. Livayit. So we take out the dagesh out of the base. You see that? All right, let's look at the other example. We have the word door. This is the word delit. Remember daylight, delit? Well, if we're going to say like a door, then that would be kedelit. Kedelit. And since we're not pronouncing the dalit any differently from with a dagesh or without, it's not like to a house above in the above example, but rather it's one that is going to be pronounced virtually the same, but you're not going to have the dagesh. Now, let's go to the board and talk about something that's going to be very important in Hebrew. All right? We've already learned, if I wanted to say the book, then I would write it like that, the book. All right? But what about an inseparable preposition? You say, well, you just attach it right onto the word, right? And so what I do is do that. No, that's, see, as we've been saying all along, the Hebrews, they want to make things and keep things short and simple, right? And so they say, let's just take this thing out of here. Let's just take this out of here altogether, and let's let the inseparable preposition assume the pointing of the definite article. And so what you would have is, if you wanted to say in the book, you'd have that right there. You'd have ba sefer. Now you noticed that just a minute ago that we were trying to say, we wanted to say in a book. It looks like that, in a book. This doesn't have the dagesh, and this has the reduced shavah right underneath it, right there. All right? But if we're wanting to say in the book, notice the two different changes. The inseparable preposition steals the vowel that was underneath the definite article, and it still retains the dagesh. So that means that there are two things that show you that this is definite, and this, of course, is indefinite. All right? Now, even if we had a word, one of our begad kafat letters that began right here with the first letter of the triliteral root, when you have an indefinite preposition attached to it, then that takes away the dagesh right out of that. So if you have a begad kafat letter that normally would have that dagesh when it started a word, this is going to steal it away from that. All right, now let's go back to the textbook and look at some examples of what we're talking about here. I'm on page 91, the bottom of page 91, and then we'll also go on to the top of page 92. All right, this is introducing us to these inseparable prepositions and how that works. All right, it says, study the following. All right, the book and in the book. All right, notice how this works. The book, we already know, is ha-sefer. But the one right below that is in the book. We have ba-sefer. So what's happened, you see, is it has just bumped out the definite article. So what they tell us you've got in the parentheses there, you got sefer plus the definite article hey with the patak plus the inseparable preposition base. And so what we have done then is we have taken out that inseparable preposition and put the base in its place, and thus we have translated the book. Now the example right below that is the man, ha-ish, and we have in the parenthesis ish, and the definite article hey, and then the inseparable preposition le. So we're wanting to say to the man, we have la-ish. Now what I want you to notice here is that the la has not the patak, but it has the comets. Why does it have the comets? Can you figure that out? Well, the reason it has the comets is because it takes whatever vowel pointing was underneath the definite article. If it was a patak, then the inseparable preposition takes the patak. If it was a comets, then the inseparable preposition takes the comets. All right, and that should be something that is fairly clear. All right, now let's continue to move down a little bit and look at some other examples on the top of page 92. Thus, if we wanted to say the horse, which is familiar to you, we say hasus. If we wanted to say to the horse, that would be lasus, to the horse. All right. If we wanted to say the father, we'd say ha'av. If we wanted to say like the father, it's still definite, we would say cha'av. If we wanted to say the evening, we would say ha'erev. If we wanted to say in the evening, that'd be ba'erev. Ba'erev. All right, let's move down and just look at the next examples. It says, read the following very carefully. All right, if we wanted to say in a good book or in the good book, like a great blessing or like the great blessing, notice how this would be done in progression. All right, the first one is in a good book. That would be be sefer tov, in a book, namely a good one. The second one is in the good book. That's ba sefer hatov. So we're saying in the book, namely the good one. All right. Third, we're just wanting to say like a great blessing. This is indefinite. All right. This would be ki v'racha gedol. Gedolah. That would be feminine, wouldn't it? All right. So the inseparable preposition is one that doesn't show the sign of the definite article, and the dagesh does not occur in the base of the word blessing. And then the fourth example, we're wanting to say, like the great blessing. Now, the inseparable preposition kaf is going to assume the sign of the definite article, and so that's going to be pronounced kab racha hagedulah. All right, like a great blessing. Thus, what we've learned, that if the inseparable prefix contains a definite article, the adjective must also be made definite. This is the same thing that we've already learned. All right, let's look now at the biblical word list. These are, once again, nouns occurring 500 to 5,000 times. The word way is a feminine word and is pronounced Derek. Derek. Now, if you know somebody named Derek, then that's a Hebrew word that means the way. All right, the word heart in the Bible occurs in a lot of times. Lev. Lev. The word voice is kol. Kol. If you hear my voice, harden not your hearts, the Lord says. Head. Rosh. Rosh. And the number 7, very important obviously in Hebrew and Old Testament study, this would be Shiva. Shiva. All right? Those are the biblical word list that you need to continue to add to your ever-growing vocabulary list, and these are things that we'll see a lot of times as we study through the Hebrew Scriptures. Now, the study hints that are given to us on the bottom of page 62 are pretty evident. There's no reason that we need to overemphasize or emphasize the importance of knowing the prepositions. Please do not proceed on to future lessons until you feel comfortable with the function of the inseparable preposition, and also being very familiar with the separated prepositions. All right, also the grammar that was given on 2b is very important, in that you do not have two shavas together at the beginning of a word in Hebrew. And then also you need to distinguish carefully between two different things. And let's go to the chalkboard here and use this as an example once again. Distinguish carefully between, let's talk about going to a house. It'd be just like that. Lebayit. Distinguish carefully between something like this and something like this. All right, what do you see different between those two? Between this one up here, put the accent there, between this one up here and this one down here. Well, hopefully you're saying, well, I see two things that are different. This is different and that is different. And what those two things tell me is that that is a sign of the definite article. This lamed here has kicked out the hey, but it stole its vowel. And so as a result, this is definite. This is to any house. This is to the house. All right, one more example to make sure that we've got this. Now we're saying like a man. What's the difference here? See the difference? All right, you say, well, I see basically one thing that's different, and that is this right here. All right, that's the sign of the definite article. If I was just wanting to say the man, since the aleph is a weak guttural and it cannot take the dagesh, we go ahead and strengthen this. You recall that particular lesson that we've had a while ago. So when I take the inseparable preposition and I put it in there, then it kicks out the hey, it steals its position, but it still retains its pointing right there. All right? Also, you need to remember that in Hebrew, the adjective that's attached is still expressed in the same way. Let's go back to our example. We were saying, in the book. All right, in the book, the good one. All right, so notice how in the book, the good one. So if you don't recognize this as having the definite article, when you get to your adjective, you're not going to recognize that the adjective has to agree. If this is definite, the adjective has to be definite too. So in the book, namely the good one. So when it be translated, in the good book. So even though we don't have the hey here, the definite article was still present. The inseparable preposition just took it away. And so we recognize that it's there, and so we also need to put it on right there. All right, let's now go to the exercises and work on some of these things together and see how well we're doing. On page 94A, it says, give the English for the following. And once again, I'll do the evens or the odds with you. Beli would be without. Achrei would be after. Number 5, the me would be from. Number 7, el is the word to. Number 9, bain is the word between. Number 11, min is the word from. 13, ke is the word as or like. Number 15, kemo is the word as or like, just like in number 13. All right, let's go down. Translate the following into English. Let's see how well we can do with the odds here. Number 1, we have ke tafuach. That would be like an apple. Not the apple, but like an apple. It would have to have a patak underneath the inseparable preposition, wouldn't it, to say like the apple. And then number 3, we have layom. That would be 2 or 4 a day. Number 5, we have miyom. That would be from a day. Number 7, we have ba'ir. That's in the city. In the city. Number 9, we have li shana. Li shana. That would be for a year or to a year. Number 11, we have ka-ish. That'd be like or as the man or like the man. That's definite. Number 13, we have la shana. That would be for the year. Number 15, we have bevayit. That would be in a house. Number 17 would be livracha. That would be for a blessing. And just looking right down at number 18, that would be lavraka, for the blessing. See the difference between those two? And then number 19, we have kimnorah. That's like a camp. Like a camp. All right, and then you see some good examples on that. All right, let's go back to the chalkboard and do some of the ones on letter C for that we have together. All right, the book wants us to do number 1 here. We want to do a horse and the horse. That should be pretty easy for us. Horse, the horse. Okay, That's fairly simple. We can do those. And then let's skip number 2, of course. Go down to number 3. For a blessing. All right, the inseparable preposition for is like that. And then I do blessing, barakah. All right, so that's the way that's spelled. Blessing begins with a shavah, so that's going to have to be a hirik there. Rakah. Okay, number 5, like the big horse. All right, so like the horse. So that would have the sign of the definite article, the great one or the big one, gadol. Like the big horse. All right, number 7, for this good woman. All right, this is going to be a little longer one. We're saying for the woman. Okay, for the woman, Isha, the good. Ha-tova. This. Ha-zot. Make sure we use the feminine there for woman. Ha-zot. All right, so that's the way that would look. For this good woman. All right, and we'll do one more together, and then we'll move on to some others. Like the father. All right, the inseparable preposition like goes like that. Father is av. So what we would have is like the father. So 3 little letters translate into 3 English words, like the father. All right, now let's work together a little bit in the time that we have left. On top of page 95 in the textbook, it says, translate the following into English. And so let's work on these a little bit together. And we're on letter D, top of page 95. All right, once again, we'll do the odds together. And you can work on the evens on your own. Continue to work on your pronunciation as well. Okay, number 1. Haleku ha'anashim el hakramim ha'ele. All right, this would be translated, the men walked to these vineyards. The men walked to these vineyards. Now, this is something that we have mentioned just briefly in periods before, but how do you know whether the shavah is to be pronounced or to remain silent? Well, the easiest rule that I know to tell you is simply that if the shavah follows a long vowel, such as in number 1, we've got the hey and then the lamed with the shavah, that particular shavah would be pronounced with a quick E sound. Ha-leku, ha-anashim, and so on. All right, number 3 is halak kasus, akare ha-kelev, ha-shakor. This would be translated, the horse walked after the black dog. Number 5, halak ha-ben im ha-ish, ha-zaken el ha-sha'ar. Ha-sha'ar, okay? Looking at this one, the son walked with the old man to the gate. And number 7, haleku ha-anashim ha-zeknim ad ha-har ha-gadol. And that would be translated, the old men walked as far as the great mountain. All right, that's enough of those. Let's go back to the chalkboard and work on translating some of the following into Hebrew. It says without vowels, and so we'll not worry about the vowels on these. Makes it a little bit easier for us just to concentrate on the way the letters should be. we want to say to the house. They want us to use unattached prepositions. So that would be L to the house. That would be, this house. That would be like that. And that's all we're going to do. I want to put those vowels in there, but that's all we need to do on that one. Number 3, we want to say from this great city using the separated preposition. So we've got min, ha'ir, the great. Say, now wait a minute, thou putting the feminine on there. City is a feminine word, remember that. And then we want to say this city, so that would be ha-zot, like that. All right, then looking at number 5, among these white garments, we'd say bain, the garments, make that plural, the white garments, that's lavan, neem, garments, the white, these garments, and so on. All right, that gives you a good example of those. All right, let's go to the next one on F. We want to translate the following into English, and once again we'll put this on the screen for you, even though you have it right there in your textbook, but you can see from the screen what we're talking about. All right, number 1, kara ba sefer hazeh. This would be translated, he read in this book. Number 3, halak el habayit hayafe hazeh. This would be translated, the horse walked after, wait a minute, make sure I'm translating. Yeah, he walked to this beautiful house. All right. Number 5, you got halaknu el ha'ir hazot. We walked to this city. Number 7, Yashava Bash Sadeh Etzel Ha Nachal. That would be translated, she walked in the field beside the river. And number 9, we got Amadou Be Geshem Mul Ha Sha'ar. They stood in the rain opposite the river. All right, that gives you a pretty good look at some of the things that we're trying to translate and work on here. And hopefully by doing some of these together and also going to the chalkboard and working on some of these, you've been able to pick up some of the important points that are necessary in working with and understanding these inseparable prepositions. Hang in there, continue to work with these inseparable prepositions. You're getting it, you're doing fine, and you're translating some Hebrew. You can notice that even some of the exercises do sound like some Bible verses, and that's some of the things that they're trying to do in this. But you're doing a good job. Hang right in there and continue to work on these lessons. Don't proceed on to lesson number 17 until you've understood the inseparable prepositions, and then you'll be ready to go on.